All right. Thank you for joining us today for TCU Presents Beyond Medicine, a gathering of minds from the Burnett School of Medicine at Texas Christian University. Now, we have people watching from many places across the U.S. on social media and around the world. Let us know where you're watching from in the comments. I see we have Arlington already on the stream, and of course, Fort Worth holding it down for the fort. So let us know where you're watching from in the comments. I'll make sure to shout you out. And I'm going to get this started. We have Dean Stuart Flynn, Dr. Mohana Krishnan Satyamurthy, and third-year medical student Sam Saeed, who is actually featured in the summer 2023 issue of TCU Magazine that is available to read online right now at magazine.tcu.edu. All right, and let me get two more shout-outs in. I see Phoenix. Ann's watching from Phoenix. Then we also have Frisco, Denver. Okay. Congratulations to the Denver Nuggets last night, advancing to the NBA Finals. I just got to throw that in. I'm a sports guy. All right. So I will tell you a little bit more about our guest in a second. But before we get to that, let's start with me. I am your moderator, Prescott Stokes III. I'm the Integrated Content and Marketing Manager at the Burnett School of Medicine at TCU. Now, one of the many things that sets the Burnett School of Medicine at TCU apart is a focus on emerging science and technology. Since the school's founding in 2019, all first-year medical students participate in the course called the Future Accelerators of Medicine and Beyond, or if you like to use acronyms, you can just call it FAB. That's right, FAB for short. Now, the students meet 4 weeks out of the year for intensive sessions that help aspiring doctors both predict advances in science and healthcare and discover how these advances will influence their career and care for patients, including how technology can be used to improve the health outcomes for patients. Now, no other U.S. medical school, or at least that we know of, has a program like the Future Accelerators of Medicine and Beyond. Students will experience an immersion addressing the role of genomics in healthcare, addressing how we can harness our genetic makeup to predict health and disease for each person individually, and then use this information both in prevention and treatment of disease. Such information has the potential to help address public health goals, both in the United States and globally, and also assist patients to better understand and influence their health. Now, the medical students here at TCU also learn about biowearables. I got to say biowearables. Not a word you use every day. They also get to learn about the life cycle of drug development, artificial intelligence, and a whole lot more. But what really sets this program apart is that they get the opportunity to innovate as well. So at the start of FAB, we put the students into small groups where they use technology to design healthcare solutions, addressing anything from childhood obesity to even cardiac disease, and also assessing health inequities from local neighborhoods across the nation and beyond. Now, in the very last week of FAB, it is devoted to that group of students. They're put into groups of 5, and they get to create a product to advance screening for disease. But there is a twist. So if you like sports, clearly I like sports. I've name drop sports already. If you're a fan of the Dallas Mavericks, which you should be if you live in DFW, and owner Mark Cuban, we took a page out of his book and we have the students present those ideas for their products, Shark Tank style. And so then we have a panel of experts who kind of go in and dissect their pitch for their products, assessing how well it could work and how beneficial it could be for patients. So it's really cool to see, and you'll get more of an opportunity to hear more about that and see it later on in the show. So I would like to thank the TCU Alumni Association, TCU Magazine, and the Office of Social Media Management for coming together to produce this special session of TCU Presents. Now, let me introduce our panelists. So I'm going to start very first with Dr. Stuart Flynn, the founding dean of the Burnett School of Medicine. Dean Flynn spent his medical career as a surgical and molecular pathologist. Good afternoon, Dean Flynn.
Good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon, Prescott.
All right, thank you. We also have Dr. Mohana Krishnan Satyamurthy, or Dr. Mo, as most of his patients in Fort Worth call him. We'll actually call him Dr. Mo going forward. He is a professor and the department chair of internal medicine at the Burnett School of Medicine. Now, Dr. Mo has served in a number of leadership roles with Baylor Scott and White All Saints Medical Center, including chief of staff and as the founding medical director of cardiology for Baylor Heart and Vascular Hospital in Fort Worth. Good afternoon, Dr. Mo.
Prescott, good afternoon. Good afternoon to everybody else on the panel and everyone joining. We're going to have a fun afternoon today.
All right. And last but not least, I am happy to have Sam Saeed, a third-year medical student at the Burnett School of Medicine with us. Sam is actually featured in the summer 2023 issue of TCU magazine for his work with his nonprofit, Dana's Footprints. Now, in the past 3 years, Sam and his team at Dana's Footprints have raised more than $150,000 and purchased more than 700 shoes for kids in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. That is commendable. Welcome, Sam. How you doing?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me. I see some recognizable names in the chat. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, let me give a couple of shout outs. We have Mansfield, Texas, and Kansas City. Diane is watching for Kansas City. How you doing, Diane? All right. So welcome to everyone watching online. If you have any questions, you can put them in the comment section. And at the end of our show, we're going to do a little bit of a Q&A with our panelists. But before we get to that, Dean Flynn, I want to start with you because when you came and started this medical school, you actually proposed and designed the Future Accelerators of Medicine and Beyond course at the start of medical school for first-year medical students. And you also teach this class as well. So from your perspective, why is it so important for TCU medical students to have these experiences?
Well, thanks, Prescott, for the question. I think succinctly, medical schools do a admirable, and it's a hard and onerous job, as Sam would attest as a med student, of teaching students about the science of disease today, our knowledge base today, how to manage disease, our knowledge base today. But I don't think what we've done as well as we should is kind of project where they are going as students and then young physicians as their career evolves. So we've all lived through the cell phone evolution. Well, that's exactly what's happening in medicine, technology, and knowledge. So I really thought this was a nice chance for our students to kind of project into the future. We're not clairvoyant, so we're not going to hit this perfectly, but really a main intent of this is to make them comfortable with change. And the change usually means significant advances in knowledge and technology. So that was kind of the premise behind all of this. Put an external advisory committee together, and that's how we kind of came up with the topics that we wanted to expose our students to.
And so, Dean Flynn, you talked about change. So can you, for everyone watching, for lay people who aren't following how fast medical technology is progressing, can you just give us some examples of how science and technology has evolved in maybe just the last 4 years since we got our first class of medical students?
Well, I think as a backdrop, it's estimated right now that medical knowledge doubles every 70 days. I'm pretty sure if I asked Sam how hard it is to learn what we know today, he would tell you how problematic that is, how overwhelming it is. But if that's doubling every 70 days, then we have to have the next generation of physicians be comfortable that they can't memorize things, but rather can go out and discover things. So that's another big part of this course. So as Dr. Mo would attest to your question of what has changed in the last 4 years, just amazing changes in, for instance, understanding of our genome, of our genes, and the diseases now that we know are caused by genetic, or at least enhanced by genetic abnormalities that we didn't even know. We thought our genes played a role, but we didn't know. From a technology point of view, for instance, you can talk into a cell phone with an app, and it will predict your risk of Parkinson's disease. So that is profound science. It also is something that we need to harness. And that's another thing. We want our graduates to be good consultants and mentors with their patients because otherwise knowledge like that can be very, very unsettling without a physician that can help kind of explain it to you, what it means.
Yeah. And so Dean Flynn, I actually got the privilege to be a fly on the wall for the very first FAB course in 2019 with the inaugural class of medical students. And that course was actually centered around artificial intelligence. And they got a chance to learn how IBM's Watson technology could actually help them in treating patients in the future. So can you just talk to us a little bit about why you designed that very first course around artificial intelligence, and also the opportunity to bring IBM in to talk to the medical students?
Well, I think first of all, as we all know, artificial intelligence has taken on a pretty significant twist over the last 6 to 12 months. So it's not now just viewed as a positive, an engine that we want to harness and advantage. We also recognize it's got some real sinister sides to it also, depending on how it's used. And we're hearing that in great force right now. But for many of us, Dr. Mo also would attest to this. For instance, when the patient is sequenced his or her genome, we don't have the time nor the ability to scan that entire sequence and pick out important components, mutations, and other concerns. Whereas you can write algorithms in an AI mentality that will search those and kick those back to you in a matter of seconds. Just one example. So looking at data at electronic records of patients, they're voluminous, they're full of all kinds of material. But if we can train, and this is a little bit machine learning, for artificial intelligence to go in and pull things out and make them matter as a matrix, like patients who are on many, many drugs, and what are some of the concerns. So in any event, reached out to IBM, and with tremendous pleasure, they agreed to come in and teach in this first week. And so brought the Watson technology into the classroom. The challenge to the students was to build their clinic, their patient clinic of the future, using artificial intelligence. And it was phenomenal to watch these brand new medical students who did not know much about medicine, do not know much about artificial intelligence, and the creativity of how they would harness the Watson equivalent to build their clinic of the future. That's the whole purpose of this course. Get your brain to think out of today and into tomorrow.
And actually, I think that's probably a pretty good segue for Sam, because Sam, you're part of the class of 2024. You all started during the pandemic, right? So with the way you all have been learning medicine, a lot of that started virtually, right? So can you talk to me a little bit about what you can remember from the FAB courses that you participated in that were actually, Dean Flynn designed it around COVID because it was happening in real time?
Yeah, so like Dean Flynn said, we have 4 weeks of FAB that is kind of designed to give us a break from our curriculum, but at the same time allows us to think beyond the books and beyond medicine. And really gives us an opportunity to use our creativity. So one of the weeks focused on genomics with a large concentration centered around the high probability that soon, and I'm talking about within the next 10 years or by 2031, we'll be able to sequence a patient's entire genome and then use that to drive how we prescribe and develop medications. And in this way, we can personalize medicine. Another week allowed us to be exposed and engaged with some of the major players in machine learning, like Dr. Flynn said, IBM, Watson. But we weren't just challenged to think about how we would engage, adopt, and adapt to the technology, but also to think about the ethical issues that may arise from this tremendous power. For instance, like, does data and analytics supersede a seasoned physician's experience? And at what point do we listen to the machine over the person? And so in that way, we're really thinking beyond medicine, and it kind of gets your brain thinking in a different way.
And Dean Flynn, I just want you to just interject a little bit. how great is it that you were able for the second class of medical students, when COVID was happening in real time, being able to craft a course around that in real time for them? How great was that for you as someone who loves to teach?
Well, I would. Thanks for the question, Prescott. I would say we had the time to really follow COVID live time, both the science, the epidemiology, and the issues around public health. And I've talked to several other medical schools at that time, and they could not wedge something like this into their curriculum because it's very regimented. And it made me really appreciate the nimbleness. So our students, in a fab week on COVID, for instance, had one of our local CEOs that runs a major health system come in and talk to our students about what is happening today in COVID. We'll all read in the history books 10 years from now what this was all about. Our students were exposed to it live time. And I was really, really pleased for the students that they're living through a pandemic that hopefully they may never see another one in their lifetime, but they were actually watching it live time through the healthcare lens.
That was a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. And that just kind of goes to show you, new medical school, you can think on the fly, implement some new things. So that's one of the beauties of the Burnett School of Medicine at TCU, and having these type of opportunities allotted to us with our curriculum and the way our school is set up. Dr. Mo, you are also a very intricate part to recruiting doctors as a department chair in the community to teach our medical students when they go into their longitudinal integrated clerkships, which we call it LIC for short, but they get to be partnered with physicians from their very first class. So Dr. Mo is partly in charge of finding those physicians to partner these students with in clinics. So I'm just wondering, what type of technology are you looking for those doctors to have to teach our medical students when they come in for their LIC, Dr. Mo?
Prescott, it's a great question. I actually might rephrase it by asking ourselves, what are the core values and faculty members we're looking for that embrace our core values here at TCU and the Burnett School of Medicine when it comes to modeling the best possible teaching and learning environment. So before I touch briefly on technology, I'd say we're looking for empathic, scholarly physician faculty members who can model those roles, responsibilities, and behaviors that help our students understand what it means to be a truly patient-oriented, patient-centered physician, as you care for your patients and your future. And so I'd start by emphasizing our values. In terms of technology, because we care so much about allowing our students to look into the future and not be afraid to embrace change, and in fact become change leaders in their communities, technology is a big part of this. So the FAB curriculum is a perfect example of how we're teaching and training them. And we're looking for invested faculty partners that don't fear change in their practice, but are ready to embrace change when it's going to really serve that key endpoint, which is accomplishing excellence in patient care. So whether that be early adoption of harnessing the power of clinical genetics, pharmacogenomics, we're going to touch on a few of these topics in a moment, whether it means embracing the use of biowearable technology to gather more data in real time on their patients, whether it means embracing opportunities for how a physician may bring carefully adjudicated and I think patient value added artificial intelligence into their practices. We look for all those additional characteristics because we really want physician faculty who are practicing beyond the community standard of care and looking to bring in new avenues of learning to expose our students, to. So that's probably how I'd approach that recruitment piece.
Yeah, and actually, I want to talk a little bit about some of these technologies that you just kind of listed off. So, and maybe I can get you all, since you're the experts, to kind of explain it to a layperson, right? Someone who doesn't know anything about medicine. They only go to see their physician when they need to for checkups and things like that. So let's start with the term genomics. So Dean Flynn, if you could explain it to me as if I was a kindergartner, like how would you explain what is genomics to me? How does that work?
Well, I wish you had asked Mo that question, but unfortunately you asked me. So bottom line, most people have heard of DNA. And
Mhm.
DNA is our genetic makeup that determines basically who we are, everything from hair color to disease risk and the like. Um, and so that's now we have the present ability to look at every gene that we as a human has. Um, and we can sequence and then, as I said earlier, look at that entire sequence of all of our genes and all of our chromosomes and look for things that we've determined we would like to know about that patient. So one would be, we certainly know that there are certain genes that increase the risk of breast cancer. We know the chromosome they reside in, and we know what the mutations look like. So now you can screen maybe a woman from a family with breast cancer that's in a mom and a sister and a grandmother, and see if that patient's at risk for that particular gene. It doesn't mean because you don't have it, you're not at risk for breast cancer. It just means you're not at the high risk for that particular gene. So that's probably not for a kindergartner, but hopefully maybe for a middle school student.
Yeah.
You
No,
know, if I can add to that commentary, Sam brought up a crucially important term in our lexicon of emerging terms in medicine, which is personalized medicine. And so the whole goal of genomics, proteomics, any of the omics, as we refer to it in science, is to enhance patient outcomes through a better understanding programmatically at the DNA and cellular level as to why things may happen. One of the things we talk to our patients often about is, drug response and pharmacogenomics is a crucially important field that has finally seen its maturation to where it's real live clinical in real life clinical medicine. I had the privilege 20 years ago being involved in some of the early projects in this field, and to see it kind of get to the point where it can be delivered at the bedside in any clinic to help a physician determine, based on the genetic programming of your liver enzymes as a patient, we think you may or may not respond to drug A better than drug B, and thereby fulfilling some of the promise that Sam brought up, that we'll be able to tailor, in a more prospective, patient-targeted, patient-focused, and highly personalized fashion therapeutics, because otherwise the old school way of doing this in medicine has been trial and error. And so we hope to be able to minimize some of that through harnessing the power of genomics.
And Dr. Mo, if I'm understanding this correctly, right? It sounds as if this gives you extra detail. Like, I know when you go into the doctor and the doctor will ask you for like your family history, right? To just kind of help you determine different things that maybe you might have that maybe you don't have right now. But using genomics, it's almost like taking that history, but you could go like a level deeper, right? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just next level of learning more about a history. And family history is really important to us in medicine. And I know Sam and Dr. Flynn would agree. I mean, it's a big part of our history taking, is taking a very accurate family history, because as we become more and more facile and sophisticated at genetic risk stratification of patient disease states, the family history is huge. And that's important because it leads to the opportunity for discovery too. The better history we take, which is a very fundamental, elemental part of medicine that goes back thousands of years, we can harness in the power of all the techniques we have today to specifically answer questions to families that have lingered in their minds for decades. Why on earth does everyone in my family have this? And so now with the power of genomics and sequencing technology and the speed to sequencing, we have opportunities to help families through more detailed research studies.
Yeah. And so I also want to bring up a word that I mentioned earlier, biowearables. So Dr. Mo, for a layperson, and even for myself, explain to me what are biowearables?
Yeah, hey, this is really a cool area of medicine that I I think all of us would have said years ago when we started seeing Fitbits and things like this is stuff that everybody knows about today. Lots of folks have Fitbits. We would get a lot of inquiries about data that was being picked up in the first generation wearable technology. Fast forward to 6-7 years later, we have FDA approved instruments that you can carry around to do a cardiac rhythm diagnosis, which allows for much more rapid diagnosis for patients that's patient-centered, patient-driven, patient-controlled. When you have a physician or practice that's willing to partner with a patient to get that data. And I'm giving you just one example in helping diagnose arrhythmias. But if you can just imagine the amount of, I think, confidence and peace of mind that a patient receives when you prescribe or advocate for one of these well-adjudicated wearable devices to help them acquire information for you, just even creates a greater doctor-patient exchange of information and strengthens that relationship. And I can tell you for certain we could use this information, particularly if it's an FDA-approved instrument, to make clinical decisions faster, sooner, more rapidly, and kind of help folks sooner than we may have been able to in years past.
Yeah, no, that makes, actually, Dr. Mo, that makes perfect sense because my wife sees a cardiologist, and so her Apple Watch, she actually sends, like, if she feels a palpitation, she can actually like go into an app on her phone and it'll kind of record what's going on, and she shares that data with her cardiologist. So now she actually has a bio wearable. I didn't even know that's what you called it.
Yeah,
that makes perfect sense to me now. All right. So also, let's stay on the topic of actual physical technologies, like the Microsoft HoloLens, and that is something we use here in our simulation and technology training at the Burnett School of Medicine at TCU. And I will let Dr. Mo talk about this, but Sam, as a medical student, can you just kind of explain to the audience how you all use the HoloLens and then also the HoloAnatomy program to help you all learn human anatomy?
Sure. So for those that don't know, HoloLens combines both virtual reality, which is actually traveling to a digital world, with augmented reality, where you can actually take the objects and place them in real environments. And so in this way, it allows us to realistically experience like the simulation of a diseased body, a stressed heart, or a damaged lung. You know, it's one thing to be told about tricuspid regurg, but what does that really mean? But what we can do is we can use the HoloLens to actually see that process and how prolonged activity will kind of like enlarge the heart. So by using HoloLens in medicine, any bodily function or dysfunction can be created, and you can kind of use it based on your educational needs.
And Dr. Mo, can you just talk to us a little bit about the importance of medical students being able to learn the traditional gross anatomy, but also being able to supplement that with the HoloLens after they come from gross anatomy?
Yeah, I have to tell you, Prescott, the first time I saw this as a practicing clinician, I was absolutely floored. I mean, what a gift that Sam and all of our students get to have in terms of learning three-dimensional anatomy. I mean, it is the most incredible experience, having done a lot of procedural work in my career and having sent a lot of patients to the operating room. Literally for the first time in my life as a cardiac specialist, I stepped into the human body and swam through that aorta to see what it looks like on the other end, and the ability to manipulate those images and view them through different angles. It is really, really remarkable. I didn't expect to feel the way I felt when I interacted with the HoloLens. Now, I have no expertise in this area, so right. I'm the wrong person to ask about thoughts, but I can't imagine how this wouldn't influence a superior education for a student here at TCU at Burnett. I mean, I don't have this. This book is on my bookshelf behind the computer, but I can show you where we learned our anatomy from in my medical school class, which I'm sure what same textbook Dr. Flynn used, Gray's Anatomy. Just a regular image, a static image of anatomy, and kind of trying to visualize that into 3 dimensions, almost impossible. And so you fast forward to this opportunity, I think it's awesome for our students.
Yeah, and I just have to say, as a layperson, I've used the HoloLens, and I mean, obviously you put it on, you kind of look like RoboCop, right? You kind of get that look going. But I thought it was just really interesting when one of the course instructors actually showed me a kidney. And then I could see it, right, floating in front of me. And then she said, go ahead and look inside of it. And I was like, look inside of it? And she said, yeah, go ahead, stick your head in it. And I kind of peered into it, and I could see like all the different blood vessels and all of these different things inside of the kidney. And then I could step back and see the whole thing. And then she reconstructed the whole human body around it in front of me. And I was just, for the first time, I was blown away. But Dean Flynn, can I get you to chime in on just having this type of technology? When you decided to build this medical school, why did you think this would be an important part of how they learn anatomy?
Well, I hope everyone who's watching this understands we're being innovative and futuristic, not because we want to be number one in innovation. It's because where healthcare is going, and so this is, and I have to share this. This is in a partnership with Case Western Reserve University and Microsoft. So now the hollow anatomy, we just finished the neuroanatomy, which is just profound, and as Dr. Mo would attest, just so difficult to even begin to understand as a student or a resident. But now we're trying to take this technology to the next level. So the next level now is to build in pathology and build in physiology. So you can see it's not just watching a video, it's not just reading a textbook or an article. To your point, Prescott, you literally go inside of the body and you may see a mass in the liver. Mm-hmm. And now we're building where, and all these things are differential diagnoses, right? It's so trainees can start to appreciate what they're seeing by imaging studies. The other thing I would say is we can build congenital abnormalities into these. So if you're a surgeon and 0.05% of the population has this particular vascular abnormality when you go to take out the gallbladder, well, the way to train residents is every once in a while put an abnormality that is normal from the patient's point of view, because they need to anticipate that when they're doing the surgery. So there are lots of things that we are right now just beginning to take advantage of what is an amazing technology.
And, Sam, I just want to ask you, this type of technology that you're learning medicine with, when you're out in your clinical rotations, have you ever seen something in clinic, like a patient come in with a diagnosis, and it's something that you were actually looking at in HoloLens, and it gave you maybe a better frame of what was happening when you're working with the clinician?
Not quite HoloLens, but in my OB-GYN rotation, I was fortunate enough to sit in on a presentation about a company's proprietary technology that was able to quantify the amplification process of molecular diagnostics. And they did this using quantitative, counting templates to help power our ability to detect and measure like disease-related DNA fragments. Mm-hmm. And this could be done at a single base pair level. And if that sentence sounded scripted, it basically was. But I assure you, because of what I've learned in Fab Week, when I was sitting, in that room as a, first year, second year medical student, I could understand what was being discussed, why, and that kind of helped drive my learning process. Whereas if I didn't have Fab Week, there was no way I could have understood what was going on.
Right. And so Dean Flynn, hearing Sam just kind of explain that, how do you think this is going to influence Sam and the rest of our medical students when they are doctors and the care that they'll be able to offer?
I think a lot of it will be somewhat subliminal. They won't even know that they've been exposed and, have already run around the track a few times. They're not even aware they ran around the track, but they'll have a comfort with it, and they'll start to appreciate it when their fellow colleagues who didn't do this aren't on the same point on the track. And then it'll start to sink in. Well, it's not that I'm necessarily smarter than somebody else, but I've kind of been prepped and primed to be futuristic looking. The other thing I think it will do for our students, and again, this is not overt, they kind of have to almost think about it. I think their inquisitiveness from this school is going to be very substantive. I think they're always going to be wondering, well, what if? What if? So in this world, it may be, okay, I wonder if there's a gene that has not been discovered yet that might have a relevance to whatever disease X, or if there's a gene that predicts health. That's the other part we haven't talked about is genes that kind of predict a healthy outcome for you. So I think that's how it will impact our students. I fully expect a cohort of our students, and it's not our goal. We don't want to train all of them to become clinician scientists, but I'm already seeing it from some of our students who are already truly driving advances in healthcare, and they're still medical students. And I think this is a nice, just a nice catalyst for them to see that there's a value in not just being able to diagnose a disease, but actually play a leadership role in the future of disease and treatment.
And so now, Dean Flynn, I actually want to switch a little bit and talk about this word that sounds cool when you think about it. Design thinking. So imagine walking into a class and they tell you, today we're going to learn design thinking. So at the Burnett School of Medicine at TCU, we've gotten experts from other fields to come in and help educate our future doctors using design thinking, namely business professors at TCU's Neely School of Business. So from your perspective, Dean Flynn, when you think about bringing this design thinking aspect into the FAB course, what is it that you want the students to be able to take away from that part of it?
So I'm not an expert in this, but you are right. We have experts from TCU who participate in this. This is actually a 4-year exposure for our students. It starts in the very first FAB week. And I think simplistically, from my point of view, it starts to help the students build kind of this template on how to approach an issue, a question, instead of just having it be random. I either know the answer, I don't know the answer, but rather starts to guide them on a toolkit that will help them come to decisions and constructs quicker and better than maybe just the randomness of what you know and what you don't know. But this is the beginning for our students. So the FAB course for this is really the springboard for 4 years of our students addressing design thinking.
And Dr. Mo, as a part of this FAB course, so they do design thinking, but we also mentioned earlier that there's a Shark Tank portion, right? In that very last week where they have to actually design something and come up with an idea to pitch as if they were trying to get that idea sold in real life. So you participated in the very first Shark Tank. So what kind of projects did the students come up with that might have kind of made you take a step back and say, whoa, that's a pretty great idea?
Gosh, that was really a lot of fun, Stuart, wasn't it? That was the first session we did, and as judges, we had a wonderful time seeing the creativity, the willingness to think big and think without boundaryless thinking. These are all concepts that innovators have, and I was just so proud of all projects. If I recall, now it's been 4 years? 4 years, and we've been through a lot over the past 4 years. But anyway, if I recall, the winning project centered around a technology that I think has a lot of promise, which is using high frequency ultrasound sonication, if you will, to deliver cell targeted therapies if I remember, a lung cancer or some type of pulmonary disease. And I just thought the integration of ultrasound technology in a existing modality without having to engineer new instrumentation, et cetera, but apply it in a creative fashion to address a potentially unmet need is exactly the kind of thinking that we want our students to embrace and engender, because sometimes the stuff is out there. You just have to repurpose it and think about how you're going to use it. And so that willingness to think beyond one field and bring in other fields and be truly interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary in the approach to patient care and innovation, if you will, I thought was wonderful. But all the projects were just great.
Yeah, and Dean Flynn, if I recall correctly, last summer the winner actually came up with the way for early detection for pancreatic cancer, using more affordable and less invasive process using genomics. So I'm pretty sure that kind of piqued your interest, because I know you love genomics, right?
Well, yes, that was the winner, and of course we have not succeeded well in a very common cancer, namely pancreatic carcinoma. And they did. They had a rubric of different blood assays that would predict the risk of pancreatic cancer. We also had a team that built a field centric, so out in the field, not in the examining room, to diagnose concussions, another huge issue in our society. So they really, another group looked at using urine samples to diagnose human papillomavirus. The whole point of the screens is the less invasive, the more apt it is to be used. And then you want to diagnose things that are common. So human papillomavirus, cervical cancer common, or cervical infection, I should say. So to detect that in the urine, that's a lot simpler than having a pap smear equivalent taken. So these are all, to Dr. Moe's point, our students were onto some cool stuff. If they ran hard with this for a while, they may just invent something that changes the course. They do all this in a week. I want to be perfectly clear how creative their thinking is. But I will say it again, this is a pump primer. Some of them are going to be bitten by this bug, and they're going to want to now incorporate this into their career, doing clinical trials, doing discovery of something that medicine right now could use some help with.
And I just want to be clear, when they go through the Shark Tank, the sharks are actually much like what you see on TV. So Dr. Moe, Dr. Bukowski, Dr. Wormley, they were pretty hard on their ideas. But I think what the great thing was that the students took away from that was they presented ideas, but they gave them real feedback, right? Of like how this could work, or maybe if they saw a flaw in some of their ideas. So I think it's something else that they could just kind of take with them, right, moving forward as they think about other problems and things they may have to come up with solutions for when they are future doctors. So right now, I want to let everybody know, if you have a question for our panelists, you can actually put that into the comments, and then I will toss our panelists any questions that you have about artificial intelligence, new technologies, and how that relates to medical care and patient care. But before I get to any of those questions, Dr. Moe, I actually want to talk a little bit about some innovative research. So can you just give us a little glimpse into some research that you're doing with the Fort Worth Zoo and how the medical students are actually helping you with this project?
Yeah, again, thank you, Prescott. I think extending the theme of what we want to try to inspire our students to accomplish here at the Burnett School of Medicine at TCU is to think big and think without boundaries, and think of how we can ask and answer fundamental questions in medicine through observation and discovery. And that includes all the wonderful things around us in nature. And so this was really born of a concept that in our laboratory we termed dreamer projects. Dream and think about something that makes sense. Have you ever observed something in an animal that's so striking and so elegant that we should study it? And so with that general framework in mind, I approached Dean Flynn with this idea probably, Stuart, maybe 4 years ago or so, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and proposed that we would bring into alignment our School of Medicine and the Fort Worth Zoo, which is one of the finest zoos on the planet, to create a partnership where we could potentially study these animal adaptations to physiologic demands, if you will. And so great partners at the Fort Worth Zoo. Kim Rainwater and her entire team at the zoo have been terrific. And it has ended up over fast forward 4 years, leading to multiple projects that are at various stages of discovery that involve studying giraffes, that involve studying bears, that involve studying crocodiles. So not lions, tigers, and bears, but giraffes, crocodiles, and bears, I suppose. We can come up with our own term with the goal being, answering fundamental questions that definitely have translatable touch points and potential points of discovery that could translate to the way we care for patients. So, long ways from initial discovery to how we would translate those things. But if we're not willing to ask those questions, we'll never see those answers. And I would say that probably one of the greatest things that our students have learned from leading these projects. I mean, they have learned how to assemble multi-institutional and sometimes multinational collaborations across different types of institutions, veterinary hospitals, academic medical centers, various zoo partners from around the country, and organize fast-paced, scientific discussion meetings, and creating agendas and measuring outcomes and seeing what progress looks like. And so our students have learned how to create these types and forge these types of partnerships, which is the beauty of scientific discovery and the beauty of medicine and doctoring, which is creating meaningful relationships between lots of folks in service of the patient, or in this case, in service of science. And so I think each of the students that have taken on one of these projects has acquired skills that will serve them well in their career.
All right, that sounds really cool. We did get a question, Dr. Mo, while you were talking. And I think this could be for Dr. Mo or Dean Flynn. So, Anne, thank you for your question, Anne. So her question is, have the students been exposed to when the predictive analysis matures into a preventative plan for the patient? And then in quotes, she put predictive models compared to a specific patient history. Dean Flynn, I'll just let you take a stab at that. Is that something that the medical students have been exposed to?
First of all, just to reiterate, they are medical students. They're exposed to a lot of things, so we can't turn them into biostatisticians, so to speak, and that's not the thrust of the question. The answer is we, again, are building the foundation for them. This is where things are going, so it's a wonderfully astute question and challenge. So yes, our students do get exposed to predictive components of one's health or disease. And as soon as they know that, then, but again, we can't spend a lot of time at this point. This is kind of a career ambition for some of them. But then you do start to build. If you believe you have a sense of where things are going, what do we do to either mitigate a disease or empower health in a patient? Mo, you may want to jump on this as a cardiologist, because this is absolutely how your patient base and how you deal with them look.
Yeah, I think this is a really rapidly maturing and evolving field. So thank you for the excellent question. Very intuitive and kind of, again, pointing to the future of medicine. But if we can acquire data in a pre-disease state, pre-acute hospital setting presentation of a disease state, this is the goal of the future of medicine, is to really reduce that impact on the patient, and then allow for us to marshal and tailor therapies that help prevent hospitalization and manage disease states more successfully in the ambulatory office-based setting as opposed to the hospital. This is where well-applied artificial intelligence is going to really help manage this. I mean, Dr. Flynn pointed out, all of the data that comes from a health record is static data today. And I'm so happy to see so many companies and startups really think about how to reimagine this massive database. So it's leading to a field called, it's population health is a general term, but, phenomics, sticking with the omics term, is an assessment, a better assessment of what the phenotype of a patient, the physical appearance, the clinical characteristics of a patient. And so you can imagine across however many millions of folks have records integrated into various EHRs, et cetera, the ability to look at that across a large population cohort are going to absolutely lead to enhancements in predictive outcome that will let us kind of intervene in disease states even before they really occur, which is the goal of preventative medicine.
And then if I could, from a student's perspective, it's going to be specific to the student. So for me, a guy that wants to go into emergency medicine, we're able to now, if you don't turn like a phone into a powerful, revolutionary decision making that can be done at the bedside using AI. So analytics are everywhere. They're used in sports to direct decision making that determine the outcomes of games. And much like that, why would I not want to use AI at the bedside to kind of drive my decision making if need be when a patient needs a critical decision made in real time? So in that way, we have been exposed to it. We're starting to use it in many different forms.
And actually, so we got a really cool question, Dr. Mo. So do you foresee a day when people will have nanotechnology or biowearables that will send you an alert about a health issue before the symptoms present? So, and a person said kind of like new cars send you alerts, right? Or maybe like think you need air in your tire. Tire's not flat, but it'll let you know, I think you need air, right? So do you see something like that happening in healthcare with biowearables?
Absolutely, without a doubt, bank on it. It's going to happen. We are going to have this data. And I think the biggest systemic and programmatic challenge to us in medicine is to create the data processing, data filtering, and clinically facile delivery of this information to each clinician in each field. And so, that's a $1 billion startup idea. So, kind of run with it, right? Sam's gonna do this. And so,
all right, Sam, we betting $1 billion on you, Sam. Don't let us down.
Seriously, it's kind of how you process that data in real time, acquire it, filter it, curate it, and then present it in a way to any treating clinician so they can enhance their patient care outcomes. And so the opportunity is, it's going to be awesome. The challenge will be, how do we programmatically manage this forthcoming mountain of data?
So Prescott, maybe I can just give you a very quick example
Sure.
and then I'll give you the update on it. So about 7+ years ago, the so-called blue cap prescription bottle was invented, and it has a little computer chip in the cap, and it will send a message to wherever it's programmed to send. And it activates every time the patient opens the prescription bottle. The assumption being the patient takes the pill. It's timed. So if you're supposed to take it every 12 hours, it's timed. That message can be sent, for instance, for an older patient to a daughter or a son across the country. And so your mom's supposed to take a pill at 8 a.m. You wait to see that she opened the bottle, and she didn't. So you give her a call. Mom, you need to take your medication. Okay. Pretty profound and yet pretty simple. That same message can go to Dr. Mo's medical records for this patient, and it shows her history of medication testing. Well, then what was discovered is some patients would open their bottle and not take their pill. Okay, but it looked like you took your pill. So now where the technology is there are now little nano chips in each pill. And until it hits your stomach, so you can open the cap, doesn't care. You've got to put that pill in your mouth. You've got to swallow it. And then it sends the signal. Your patient has taken the pill and has actually taken the pill. So that's kind of simple in one way. And yet it's profound around patient compliance and medication. And of course, elderly patients may just forget to take their meds. So, but a child is very vested in making sure their parents do follow such medical expectations.
And actually, Dean Flynn, that was news to me. I mean, that sounds like something you would see in a sci-fi movie, but Wow, that's already, that type of technology is already with us. So yeah, that is fantastic. We did have another question about design thinking from Parminder. Thank you for your question, Parminder. The question is, what are some key challenges or barriers to implementing design thinking principles in healthcare settings, and how might they be able to be overcome? Dr. Mo, is this something that you've used in your own practice?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I would consider this form of education centered around more of a training environment. So I'd see more of a role for this, you know, certainly in our medical schools, our teaching hospitals, et cetera, to kind of help our students envision, you know, how to attack these larger problems that they're going to face, and be, again, very facile in how they adopt to change. In terms of to the ground clinical translation in real life practices, these things take more time, and that's for a very specific reason. And that's because most practicing physicians will look at any type of implementation of a new technology or new technique with an appropriate degree of circumspect inspection before they implement that process of thinking in their practice. And part of that is because of experience. It's having, you know, been responsible for the care of a patient for a long period of time. You know, adopting those types of changes in practice take a little bit longer, but I see the greatest potential in our teaching centers.
And so I actually want to throw Sam a question, because Sam is actually featured in the summer 2023 issue of TCU magazine that is available to read online right now at magazine.tcu.edu. Sam, can you tell our viewers a little bit about the £1 Million Challenge that Dana's Footprints has to raise money for kids who need shoes?
Sure. Yeah, so we predominantly rely on the generosity and involvement of people, and we utilize crowdfunding to do so. And we recruit what we call like Dana's soulmates, with the pun intended. But our largest event and crowdfunding source since our inception takes place every November. It's called the £1 Million Challenge, where multiple soulmates, like throughout the country, they lift and track their total volume and weight in an effort to reach £1 million by the end of the month. And so they document their journey to 1 million. They post on social media using hashtags and linking our website. And inevitably what people do is they wonder, wait, what's going on? Why is this happening? And it funnels them to our website, where they can read our story, understand our mission, our vision, and our values. And then they invariably kind of relate. We believe we have a very relatable story. And that's how we recruit our soulmates and likewise donors.
And when will this year's £1 Million Challenge begin?
Yeah, so it takes place during the month of November. We'll start sending out newsletters and stuff in October to kind of get people signed up and ready to go. But day one is November 1st, ends November 30th. That's the £1 Million Challenge. But fundraising happens throughout the year.
And we're going to put up the email. So if you want to contact Sam and his nonprofit, you can just get more information about Dana's Footprints and learn a little bit more about what inspired Sam and his brother Sharif to create Dana's Footprints. And also, what I think is really cool is Sam is actually using this with the medical students about building empathy, because we're creating empathetic scholars here at the Burnett School of Medicine at TCU. And this is part of his SPT, his scholarly pursuit and thesis research project about how medical students can actually maintain empathy. And this is a project that can kind of help them maintain empathy. So I've seen them go out into the community, Stop 6, Como, Diamond Hill, Northside, and just take these kids to Foot Locker in the mall, and they can pick out any shoe they want, any price. So you should just kind of see how these kids' faces light up. And it's some great work that Sam has been doing in the medical school, and his classmates have kind of rally behind him and Sharif and help them with that. So make sure you go and look for Dana's Footprints and get more information about that as well.
Read the story. Read the story.
Read the story. Yes, you can read the story.
2 minutes. Go to the website and read why.
And so, Dean Flynn, you know what? As my last question for you is going to be, so the lasting impact, you think about beyond medicine, right? So what Sam is doing is actually beyond medicine, not with technology, or artificial intelligence, but in another way, right? So what do you think the lasting impact of training these medical students in this way with technology, building empathy for patients? How do you think that's going to have a lasting impact on them as they become practicing physicians in the future?
Well, it's certainly a very complex question that doesn't lend itself to a single answer. So of course we want them to be very skilled at their in their discipline. We want them to not be frightened by advances, but rather embrace advances in healthcare. And I would say a value added to that is every one of our graduates will live in a community. That community will have areas of have a broad breadth of who comprises that community, but there will be elements of that community that have adversity and are underrepresented. And that's what I would like all of our graduates to recognize, that you have more than one or two domains to your community, and you have other parts of your community that will struggle to be able to advantage your care and to advantage other elements of and to be a part of your community from a servant leadership point of view. That doesn't make you a great doctor, but it does make you, if you are a great doctor, a great human being.
All right. And on that note, that will end our discussion. This has been a great panel. I want to thank everyone watching for joining us as we discussed how students at the Burnett School of Medicine and TCU are going beyond medicine to learn science and technology that will one day make them better doctors for you. Special thanks to our guests, Dean Flynn, Dr. Moe, and third-year medical student Sam Said, and also to our partners at TCU Magazine, the TCU Alumni Association, and the Office of Social Media Management. They're all behind the scenes helping us out in the comments. You can't see them, but they're here. So big shout out to that team for helping put this production together. You can also read more about the Burnett School of Medicine's graduating class in our summer issue, the summer 2023 issue, that's available online right now at magazine.tcu.edu. And what we talked about today, the Future Accelerators of Medicine and Beyond program, a story about that will be available to read on August 15th when the fall 2023 issue is released of TCU Magazine. And that issue will be celebrating TCU's 150th anniversary, the sesquicentennial. I got it right. I got it right. They thought I wasn't going to get it right, but I did. All right. I practiced that, people. All right. So you can also stay in touch with the TCU Alumni Association at alumni.tcu.edu. And you can also stick with them on Horned Frogs Connect. Again, I'm Prescott Stokes III. I've been your moderator for the day. Thank you for joining us, and go Frogs.